welcome to ADD Masterminds, a symphony of ideas. I'm here with Jimmy, the talking table,
Hello, it is I, Jimmy the Talking Table.
and we have Theosaurus Rex back.
Greetings, all. It is I, the Theosaurus Rex.
Woo! We need like that fake clap sound effect thing, hey?
Yeah, this show's done on a low budget, so I don't know if we're gonna get that.
Yo,
I'll just clap for myself. I have little hands. It's cool.
If only we could bring Acme back.
Yes.
But
we need to get our sponsors back.
Yeah. They're still being difficult, so I don't want to talk about it. All right, so the reason why I said it's a symphony of ideas is because Kanye. Oh, and guys, I'm gonna apologize right now. It looks like Kanye could not make it. So
this is unfortunate.
It's because he's getting ready to become president.
Yes.
Don't get political.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So I think I don't know if you listened to it, Theo, but Kanye West was on Joe Rogan, not John Rogan. Man, I am good. Did you catch that, Theo?
I did not.
Oh, okay, that's fine. Jimmy would be happy to fill you in completely on that. But
it looks like we'll be talking about most of it.
Yeah, well, there's a few things that he said, and so the reason why I was talking about ADD Masterminds as a symphony of ideas is because basically that's what Kanye said. He said, when I talk, it's not a rant, it's a symphony of ideas.
Ah.
Which sounds a lot like our show. It's a shame he couldn't make it, but I think he's like doing some kind of party with holograms on an island somewhere.
That was so cool.
Wait, is that like really what happened?
Yeah. Well, okay. All right. You know, like how Twitter always has like kind of these memes things, you know, where people are just, there's one tweet that really takes and everyone kind of makes a take on it.
Yep.
Kim Kardashian, I guess it was her birthday, and she took a whole bunch of friends to a private island so they could pretend COVID doesn't exist. And so that was kind of what they did for their weekend. And it was kind of funny, too, because she then said, it's just really humbling that I'm able to do this. And it was like, I don't think you know what that word means.
You keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
Joe Biden, our future President Bleep, keeps sending me emails humbly asking me for money for his political donation. I'm like, he doesn't know what that word means.
That word humbled is really funny to me. Like, it's just like, I'm just so humbled that you guys said I'm the greatest person in the world. Like, no, you're not. You're prided.
Well, I'm the most humble person I know, and I know a lot of people, so.
You are pretty humble.
Thank you.
So anyways, it was so bizarre that she tweeted about this and said, yeah, so me and my friends went to an island. And so these people kept like putting pictures of like Lost and putting pictures of Gilligan's Islands and copying her text verbatim. And it was a funny thing. Also, Kanye got her a hologram of her deceased father for her birthday. So,
and not like the baseball cards, right? Where the hologram baseball cards where you flex them and they change.
No, man. It's like, we're talking like Star Trek, like whatever they do.
What in the...
Basically, he brought him back to life. So
that's awesome.
Well, it's kind of like the Michael Jackson thing that they did, like, what was it, 10 years ago at one of the music awards ceremonies where they brought Michael Jackson back to life via a hologram.
Was it Michael Jackson or was it Tupac?
No, it was Michael Jackson.
Ooh.
They had a moonwalk. Tupac's still alive. What are you talking about? No.
Thank you.
He's hanging out with Elvis. But no, they did the hologram thing, like with Robert Kardashian, which I thought was amazing.
Okay, a second quote that makes me think that Kanye is an ADD mastermind. My thoughts are like clouds in Mario Brothers. I'm jumping from one cloud to another.
Definitely, that is an ADD mastermind type thing. That's our topic. So we jump from one to another.
Ding!
All right. Yeah, it was kind of fun. Like, we could have done like a whole ADD masterminds on everything he said, except for political stuff. But
that's because it's a symphony of ideas.
Okay, actually something that I thought was really smart that he said that obviously Jimmy did too. If you remove the fear of God, you create the possibility of the fear of everything else. If you instill the fear of God, you eliminate the fear of everything else. Dang.
Ooh.
That Sunday service stuff seems to be really doing something for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. You know, I said before, like, I'd be cool with Kanye coming to church, but I'm not ready to make him my pastor.
Mm-hmm.
After Joe Rogan, I'm like, yeah, he can be my pastor. I'm kidding.
But what about your president? No. Oh, we don't talk about politics.
Wow, you're doing. I leave for like one millennium practically, and then like all we talk about now is politics.
There is no president where I live, so I don't even know what you guys are talking about. All right.
That's fair.
Another thing, I just love this out of the box kind of question. How much does the Earth cost? I don't even know what that means, but I love it.
I think he was talking about it and being able to do things for everybody in humanity and heal the world and bring about world peace and feed the children.
Terrible.
No. And he was just like, we need to be able to do more for everybody because how much does the Earth cost? I was like, yeah.
You know what my answer is? Jesus. That's how much the Earth costs.
Jesus, man.
Now, open in your Bibles to some book. All right.
For your children and your children and your children.
All I'm saying is happy Halloween, everybody.
Happy Reformation Day.
I know it's the hallowest of weens.
Actually, we're going to be doing a trunk or treat.
No.
That I did not plan, and but was.
So an unplanned trunk or treat? Does that mean
it was
people are going to open up their trunks and whatever's there, the kids can eat?
He was ordered to do it.
No, even better. It was a situation where like it was going to be part of one thing. We're going to have a pumpkin patch and then all that kind of stuff. And it was going to be a fall festival. And then it was like, well, the pumpkin patch kind of fell through. And I know there's only 10 days until the trunk or treat, but we've done all this stuff for you already. I'm like, what? And they're like, oh yeah, it's all good. All you have to do is just get the volunteers ready, have a sign-up sheet and everything like that. We found a place to do it.
So what Theo is saying is that he has people. He's got people for that.
No, I have no people for that. I have not had a day off in at least 3 weeks. So it is a wonderful thing. But the reason I bring that up is because as a pastor, which I now am and have been since June, I declared in front of the church and on our live stream and everything that Halloween is a sanctified and holy thing that they can come to the trunk or treat with, and they don't have to worry about making God angry by coming and throwing candy at kids.
What about COVID?
Well, that's why we're going to throw the candy at the kids.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question about Halloween and COVID? We're going to throw candy at people.
Yeah, we're going to do something like that. We're going to sit on our driveway and place the candy in the kids' pillow sacks or buckets for them.
Oh, I guess that's fair. I thought you were going to say
we're not going to throw it.
We're going to lay it on the ground and have the kids do it and then place the candy in the kids.
Have them do a Jericho march.
They're going to open their mouth and you're going to place the candy inside their mouth.
I was listening to a financial podcast today, and the guy was talking about how he kind of has a raffle with his Halloween in his neighborhood, and he will put like one envelope with a $20 bill in it, and he will like play this risk reward game with the children if they're like over 8, and he will be like, well, little Sarah, I can give you the Snickers bar, or I could give you what's ever in this envelope. This envelope may have nothing in it, or it may have a $20 bill. What would you like to do, Sarah? Trick or treat.
I like how you say it like so creepily. It's like, hello, Clarice.
Hello. That's
all right. So when's Reformation Day?
Same day as Halloween.
Oh, it is, eh?
Yeah, boyos.
Well,
This is
I like Halloween better, guys.
well, this is why we're not Catholic anymore.
It's because you've never nailed doctrine to a tree or a door.
Yeah.
I never
Yeah.
was Catholic, Theo.
But you would have been if not for Martin Luther.
We don't know that.
That's very judgy for you to say.
You know what? Like maybe Kanye could have he could have been the one that liberated us from the shackles of Catholicism.
I mean,
Well,
he's trying to liberate
We don't
black people.
know, do we, Theo?
We don't. I'm sorry.
He's liberating all the artists, John.
Liberating all the artists. All right, hey, so this is a Theo question. When
Mhm.
are you ready to serve? Can serving in the church help sanctify you? And what responsibilities do leaders have? Oh, that's a lot of questions. So
Yes.
when
can
is a
give-
person ready to serve? Is there a certain level of having your poop in a group, to use a theological phrase, before you're ready to serve? It's a good question.
Did serve at Liberty University sanctify Jerry Falwell Jr.?
I have. Wow. I don't know. I have a reason I asked that question if it helps.
I mean, for me, I can say when I think I'm ready to serve, right? Like I would be able to judge when I'm ready to serve. But for me to look at someone else and say, no, you're not ready yet. It's like, well, you should be the husband of but one wife.
Maybe. But what?
No more than one wife.
Yes.
I know that's one of
the
the rules.
girlfriends.
Isn't there something about reputation or whatever? It's
Yes.
they got to be upstanding citizens,
Correct.
Yeah.
So those are the requirements for the for deacons and elders, and many churches have kind of a balance between they'll allow both, or they have one of them they may just have deacons serve the role of elders, etc.
But one wife.
Yes, and then it is actually up to debate within some circles of whether or not that means that if you've been divorced, if you can serve as a deacon or an elder.
Yeah, but if he's divorced, he's not married to that woman anymore, technically, under God, right?
Correct. But then they would say that part of the other thing is having your stuff together. And you obviously aren't in control of your family if you have that.
As the Apostle Paul says, have your poop in a group.
Have your poop in a group. Specifically, where that came from is I was talking with my pastor and we were talking about someone who had kind of what is it called? She had kind of one of the girls had kind of gone astray, and then she came back. She was a fairly new Christian, living. The pastor knew that she was living in sin, and her previous denomination had been okay with that sin. And he said that, you know what, go ahead. And she was like, I'd really like to be able to sing in a worship team, but I know y'all don't agree with my lifestyle and what the stuff I'm doing, et cetera, et cetera. And so he was like, well, come on, just go ahead and sing with us. What is it? It's all good.
I do think that serving can sanctify you.
Yeah.
I think maybe it's different if you're teaching. If you're going to teach people the wrong things, then maybe you shouldn't be.
Yeah, that's fair. Because teachers are held to a higher standard.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Jimmy?
I think it depends.
Okay.
What are you doing in the church in your service capacity? If you're in any sort of, I would say, leadership position where you're being held up as some sort of model as to other Christians should be like, then no, you need to have your poop in a group. I don't even know what that phrase means, so I hope I'm using it right.
Yeah, I know some days my poop's just everywhere.
Right.
Wow.
It's on the ceiling, it's on the wall.
But I think, I don't think the Lord is expecting everybody to always have all their stuff together before they serve in some sort of capacity, whether it's helping out or in some manner. I think that'll be up for the individual churches to decide. But I would say the churches should also be careful of saying, "Oh, well, they're just a singer, so." But he's gay, but I mean, because of that, he's able to hit the high notes, right? We really love those high notes, so you know,
Wow.
you know, we're okay with that, like you
Yeah.
know. So I think you can be treading into some dangerous ground, especially if they're living in any sort of open sin that actually should probably disqualify them from even being part of the church.
I
Okay.
think when you talk about like people that are modeling things, and like I think that like a lot of times we'll focus on sexuality or marital status,
Hmm.
but we'll have people that are like perfectly, they're following all the rules we want sexually, but the person's a total dick, right? Like it's like
Right.
I'd be more worried about that than the gay guy singing in the group that actually treats people kindly, like
Oh yeah,
um
me too.
it's funny to me that there are, people that are just terrible human beings and we give them a pass because they haven't done the sins that we really care about,
Right.
That's
and
very
it's
fair.
like what are the qualifications to be in leadership? Because I think a lot of times we put people in leadership that just want power, and that's the worst kind of thing.
Right.
Amen. That I am struggling with that right now too. Yay.
I have the power.
You're
Uh,
struggling
Do-
with like having
Um,
the power or wanting the power.
people who like we're rewriting our children's policy, like our
Mm-hmm.
children protection policy,
Mm-hmm.
and our personnel committee is kind of new to all this kind of stuff, and so they're making changes to give themselves more power.
Mm-hmm.
And like some of it's just like completely like their job is like to advise and consent, um, to advise on stuff and whatnot, and then to be kind of like a what is it called, a to run interference for like the pastors and everything. So if you have someone who has an issue with something or whatever, then they can go and talk to the personnel committee if they don't feel comfortable talking to a pastor. But they're trying to give themselves authority to
Mm.
legislate things and that kind of thing. And so it's
That's so
created
crazy.
a big issue with a lot
Mm-hmm.
of different families because of it.
People, hey.
I know, right? They're the worst.
It's really interesting. Speaking of leadership, um, I was listening to a podcast. Actually, it was a very political one, but I thought it was kind of interesting how they talked about gardeners versus designers. And if you even take it out of its political context and you just put it into management or, you know, church leadership, it's
Mhm.
like, are you intending to be a gardener in your position?
Mhm.
Are you intending to be a designer in your position? There's a big difference.
I was about to say, could you explain the differences?
So a gardener will plant the seed in a strategic location, but they will allow the plant to grow. A
Hmm.
designer has specifications for what the plant should look like.
Ooh, that's really interesting.
hmm And so it made me think, like as a producer, if I'm producing some tire fall music, it's like I'm definitely a gardener because those guys are tremendously talented. And they'll
Mhm.
just be like, hey, can you help me with some background vocals and help us write some background vocals? And I'll come up with something. And if they like it, they keep it. If not, they do something else, right? And I'm like, I'm
Right.
cool with that, right? And that's more of a gardener approach. But if I was more of a designer, I would be wanting to put my design into everything they do. And from an artistic standpoint, that sucks. Like that's what a big record label tends to do to artists, right? Is they'll have a model that they want the band to follow rather than just letting them be themselves like a gardener would.
Ah,
That's what
Yeah.
Kanye was talking about.
Yeah, he likes the gardener over the designer model.
So, what do you think that certain groups work better in certain things? Is there a correct way to kind of do it?
That's a good
Like,
question.
as a creative person, then I'm kind of in the middle. Like my initial style is like a gardener. I thrive best in a gardening situation.
Mhm.
But then I definitely tend to go more of a designer. Like, we're redoing the entire children's wing. And
Right.
I am definitely in designer mode where it's like people, oh, hey, what if we do this? And I'm like, that would be nice. But and then I just kind of
Yeah.
try to avoid the topic.
Well, I'm starting to realize that in my job. Because I'm looking at it and I'm like saying, okay, we're going to build a marketing plan. And I'm like, this is what I want to do. And it's like people want straight answers of what I need from them.
Mhm.
And I can't just be like, well, you do it whatever way you think works. It's like, no, I think there's
Yeah.
a very specific way that we're going to approach this so that it can follow the vision that I have. So
Yeah.
maybe there does need to be more design to what I'm doing, is what I'm realizing.
Yeah.
And so maybe gardener isn't always the answer.
I think like one of the things that I'm kind of running into is like there are definitely people at the church who are like we like the one dude he's a doer, he is not a
Hmm.
dreamer.
Hmm.
And it's one of those, if you give him the stuff to do, he is great at executing it, but he needs to not come up with ideas
Yep.
because his ideas are terrible. And
Yep.
he acknowledges that they're terrible.
Yeah.
So,
That's good.
yeah.
And
So
you
that's
need that sometimes for sure. It's like, give me some specifications and I will build it. Some people need that, while other people need, like, just set me to it.
right.
Give me some space to figure this out. What do you think, Jimmy?
I think it reminds me of home repair projects and places like IKEA. Like, you go to IKEA and you get your very just, insert the tab here and put the glue here and screw it here and you have furniture
Hmm.
Yay.
versus, somebody who can do it all by themselves and build it from scratch.
Yeah.
That sounds like too much work.
I know. Like I think I've realized that about myself over the years is that I'm much more of a give me the task, tell me what to do, and I'll do it
Hmm.
sort of
Yeah.
person. Like I like to joke cynically at work that I'm paid to do what I'm told, not what I think. Uh,
Mm.
That's awesome.
and because I've realized thinking can be a very dangerous thing in the mortgage industry, apparently.
Well, and
And
that can be nice too, because
right,
like you can save your brain energy for your creative stuff outside of work.
Mm.
true,
And work is just this robotic thing that you do, and you got all that brain energy to come up with podcasting ideas, right?
right. But then I like realize sometimes that, like for example, we have some wood pile in the backyard that we use to keep some of our firewood at. Well, it's been a really, really wet year, and that wood's just been getting soaked. And the couple times we've tried to do fire pits, it's not worked out so well. The wood doesn't end up burning very well, and it just ends up being a disappointment all around. So I decided, well,
Oh,
I decided, I know it really, I had to toast my marshmallows on my gas stove the other night to
get
make my
out. This
s'mores.
is terrible.
I know. I had to do my s'mores inside. Oh my goodness. But anyway,
Why?
but so I decided, well, I need to bring the firewood in the garage so it can dry out. So the next time I do a fire pit, that I can have dry wood that will burn.
Mhm.
And I was like, well, I thought about it. I could probably go to Home Depot or Lowe's and get some pieces of wood and screw them together and make my own little stand so that they can properly dry um, in the garage. But then I thought, but I could go on Amazon and find somebody who's already kind of got something that I just need to put a couple screws in a couple holes and voila, I'll have a cart that will hold wood. And I know that
Yeah.
it will work and it will look visually okay. And it won't collapse under the weight of all the wood. I
Right.
opted for the Amazon Fire log holder versus, probably spending $10 at Home Depot, just because I was like, if they give me the instructions and tell me how to put it together, I'm going to be able to do that. But if it comes to having to envision something to build and put it in the garage, even as something as simple as a place to store firewood, my brain just doesn't see that sometimes. And so sometimes I actually realize that limitation about myself. Like I marvel at my father-in-law, who, is very handy, and I can be handy too, as long as you're telling me what to do. But he's able to look at something and he's able to just figure out what needs to be made or what needs to be done. Same with my father. Whereas I'm always kind of more of I'm a good apprentice when it comes to these things than necessarily figuring it out. And I've realized that's my own limitation. But if you give me something to do, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it well. And it's going to be the best IKEA furniture that's ever been assembled.
Yeah.
One thing about that, watch out. We apparently had termites in our wood pile, and we didn't realize it. When we brought it inside, the termites ate the house.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
They warned me about that, and I'm not really sure what to do other than I kind of gave space between the wall and where it was. So I'm hoping that doesn't happen. But I didn't bring a lot of wood. But I don't know. I don't know if I can spray it with something.
I'm not sure. It was we didn't realize it until they were falling down from the ceiling onto us when we were trying to enjoy March Madness.
Oh.
And they were like, oh, we need to get this fixed. So the house.
Maybe I could find a better place outside for it. Then I don't know. I need to look into that.
And yeah, we didn't think we had anything, but to your second point, I think, like, for me, I started realizing sometimes it comes to a matter of time and money. And is your time worth more?
Yep.
And that kind of thing, because, like, I mean, we've repainted all this kind of all the whole upstairs. We've repainted and done multiple coats of stuff and da. And it's like, man, if I had known that they would have been willing to hire a professional painter, this could have been done like in a week instead of having to like rely on volunteers, which never showed up and stuff like that. And I was like, man, my time could have been used for so much better things, so many better things.
Totally. Well, that's it. It's like the whole idea of being handy. I'm like, I don't know if I have time to work on that. Like, I'd rather do other things.
That's what I'm at in my life too sometimes. Like, even today, I had the day off, and the tropical storm came through this week and knocked a bunch of tree branches down onto the ground. And I saw them laying around in my yard, and I was like, man, I have a lot of oak trees that have a lot of branches. And a lot of them ended up on the ground. So I went around picking them all up and bundling and stuff. And then I saw two like 12-year-old kids riding their bicycles down the street. And I realized I had my wallet on me. And part of me was like, I've got $40 on me. I'm that big, bad banker that I am, that I could throw $40 at these kids and I could get them to do this so that I can go inside and watch The Mandalorian.
Ooh.
Nice.
But I ended up.
So they did it?
No, I ended up doing it myself since I'd already started. It's like I bet $40 they could make all these twigs disappear. They'd be, relatively acceptable for where they're going to pile them for me, and I'm going to have a yard free of twigs, But I ended up doing it myself. I probably didn't do 100% as well as I could have, because I want to go inside and watch The Mandalorian after all.
I'm gonna watch that tonight.
I have not started, but I should. I finished The Simpsons. Woo!
You finished Simpsons?
All of it. Yes.
All 30 years of The Simpsons?
Yeah, buddy.
How is that even possible?
I'm stubborn. That's what it is.
Wow, that it would take a certain amount of stubbornness.
So I read somewhere.
Wait, real quick.
Sorry, go ahead.
Just real quick. And I know this kind of takes away from the ADD aspect. I just wanted to comment that I don't think saying that, like, is my time worth more than all that kind of stuff doesn't mean that those jobs are inherently bad or that their time isn't worth as much. It's the fact that, like, I can paint very good, and I can do all that kind of cut and stuff, but it takes me a lot longer than someone who does it on a normal basis.
Right.
100%. Like that's totally it. If you get actually someone who does that for a living, they're gonna do a better job and quicker.
I pay somebody to cut my yard. It's about a third of an acre. It's not a lot. I could do it myself, but then I would have to probably mow it once, maybe twice a week during peak seasons, and that would probably take me an hour and a half each time. And not to mention to weed eat, blow, and all that stuff. Like, so it'd be like maybe 2 hours each week. I was like, I already run a pretty tight schedule. If I was having to do that myself every week, I would have less time to do, children's ministries or high school youth ministry with where I volunteer at church. I'd have less time to do podcasts. I'd have less time to spend with my wife. I think I'm okay to throw $100 at somebody to mow my yard.
Yeah, man. How much does the world cost? Huh? How much does
Oh.
Earth cost?
That's what Kanye was talking about.
That's what he was
Exactly.
talking about. He was talking about the boy that mows his lawn. Okay, so architects, I read somewhere, architects will, when they're designing, they'll be like, what does this house want to be? And I was thinking, that's so interesting. Like even this podcast, what does this podcast want to be?
It
And
wants
when
to be
I
a
first looked at
podcast.
our notes, it's like this podcast does not want to be all about Kanye. So I had to make some cuts to it. But and look, we're talking about Kanye again. Sorry, I did it again.
It's all good. I will. I can testify that as someone who was in architecture, a lot of it has to do with, or not a lot of it, but that is definitely something that we think about and we're taught to think about. Because we don't want our designs to be necessarily like, yes, we're going to have our own like flair that we do, and you can definitely tell the different things with everything, but it's not our job to make necessarily what we want because we're not the client. But then it's also not the client's job to tell us everything they want, because if they tell us, everything they want, then they just might as well design it themselves. So there's
it's like the
kind of
Homer Simpson car at that point.
I don't know that reference. I'm sorry.
Okay, so he like his brother. He finds out that his brother is like a car. He's a guy that runs a car company. So he asks Homer to design a car, and Homer adds like the tail fins from like the 1960s or is it 50s? Big tail fins, and then like a big bubble to put the kids in, and it's just like the ugliest car ever designed. And it's like, yeah, that's not a good idea.
Yes.
But I do think though, like I find with music, it's like that too. It's like, what does this song want to be?
Right.
And it's like, I think this song needs this. And it's like you're trying to do justice to the music, right? It's like there's, and whether I created the entire track or whether my producer, produced the entire track, it's like I'll look at it and say, what does it need? It's almost like it's a person in itself, and it's like, what's characteristic of this piece, right?
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Sculptors talk about stuff like that when it comes
to,
like they're not trying to sculpt something; they're just trying to find what's already there.
Isn't that like what whoever did Michelangelo said? No, isn't that what Michelangelo said about David?
It's possible. I mean, Kanye could have said it too. I don't know.
There was definitely a penis in this stone.
Wow.
So tell me about your mother.
Oh man. Okay.
I did that one for Emmanuel Marsh if he's listening.
Okay, so I was listening to this podcast where this guy was talking about our dark sides and using your dark side for good. Like, and it was funny because like I listened to that I think a couple days ago, and then today I was listening to the Bridgetown podcast, and I believe this woman was a psychologist, and she was talking about anger and how anger is like a fire, and you could either use it to consume you or you can use it to fuel you. And Yeah, and so it got me thinking about like, okay, so what is a righteous anger? It's like your anger is channeled toward bringing justice, right? Like that would be a righteous anger. And I mean, part of it too is like being able to not just react out of anger, but to like say, okay, I need to get my anger grounded, like figure out what is making me angry right now. Like, is it actually something legitimate?
I can relate to this. I talk about it when I train new underwriters at work,
Hmm.
the big bad bank. I tell them, you'll know when you're a good underwriter one day when you underwrite kind of angry.
Mm.
And I was talking about how every loan you deal with, every file you look at, every paycheck you analyze, every appraisal you look at, you kind of need to have a little bit of a pissed off attitude about it. And not that like, you're just some just generally grumbly person, but you're getting ready to help the bank hand over hundreds of thousands of dollars to somebody so that they can live in a house. That's a lot of money to part with. So you
Yeah.
should come at things with almost a skeptical, cynical, kind of angry attitude because you realize somebody might be lying to you, or you want them to prove their case to you, so that at the end of the day, when you crunch all the numbers and add everything up and check it against policies and manage the risk, that you're finally like, okay, I can live with this. I can let this person have this money. Um, and I've always kind of channeled that sort of mentality over the years as an underwriter at work, that I kind of do. I'm a pretty happy guy. Like it's not natural for me to be angry, but I kind of found that if I come to every loan I look at with this kind of sort of skeptical, sort of like, no, you're trying to get one over on me sort of
Mm.
mentality, that it really makes me look for everything that needs to be done so that all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed, and that I know that when I mark something as approved, that it's good and it's golden,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
there's going to be little risk to the borrower, little risk to the bank, and that nobody's going to come, smack me around for making a bad decision.
That's interesting because this kind of brings me back to the whole elephant and rider analogy, because it's like I've got this fire and I'm trying to explain this fire. It's like why do I feel burning while I'm looking over this paperwork?
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, okay. I think this burning is actually a passion for, the truth, a passion for making sure that we don't get ripped off.
Right. That's good. I like that. Maybe I should use the word passion when I teach the class next time versus anger.
Anger.
Yeah.
Hate.
I want you to be turning green. Hulk smash.
All right. So the guy I was actually listening to, it's like School of Greatness with Lewis Howes. And the guy that he was talking to, his name is Robert Greene. And he's a guy who suffered a stroke, and so he can barely move now.
Mhm.
But he still has a lot, like he has a lot to say. And I really like this quote. He said, young people are the motors of change in this world. They are what create culture. They will create new movements. They keep this world alive because they enter the world and the world doesn't fit who they are because it was created by the boomers or whomever. So they want to mold the world into something that's more like them. And I keep thinking that we're shooting ourselves in the foot when we look at the Zoomers and we look at the millennials. You guys are millennials, aren't you?
I'm a millennial.
Yeah.
I might
Better
be.
than being a Gen Xer. Ugh.
But when we look down upon, the generations after us, instead of saying, no, you guys are the motor of change in the world. You're going to be the ones that create the culture, You're the ones that are going to dream dreams, like it's like that's
Right.
what the older generation should be saying to the younger generation. And so, and it's just interesting because this is the way I felt for some time, but it actually puts it into words now. You know, it's like they're the ones, they're going to mold the world into something that looks more like them. And they have the right to do that. So it's like, how do we get behind that? How do we assist them with that and be able to be like, okay, are you sure about this? You know, rather than, you know, like, oh, you guys just eat Tide Pods. I hate you.
Tide Pods. I think some of those are good, and some of those, I think the statement overall itself is accurate, because I think that's just what happens. You know, it's the younger people are going to do things different. They're going to change things up and whatnot. But then I don't know that's necessarily the best thing to embrace, more so than it's just something that is going to happen, regardless of whether or not we do embrace it.
Well, it's like, are they going to tear down everything that their forefathers built? Mm-hmm. And is it wise to do so?
Yeah, like that. Thank you for speaking what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
Because I think that's a legitimate concern, but then it's also, and that's kind of, I've learned a lot about myself and other people working at a church. But that's kind of the one thing it's like, hey, you know what was happening was failing before, so we're going to totally redesign everything and do everything. And there's a lot of pushback on that.
And maybe some of that pushback is good, right? Like, I think, because I think when I look at what's happening in our world with gender, I think there are things that came from this whole idea that men are men, women are women, that I do think needs to be deconstructed, because it was weird for a woman to be a mechanic. It was weird for guys to dress nice. It was weird for guys to cry. Like, I think there's things about gender that I'm like, all right, like, I'd rather tell my kid to, you know, adult up than to say man up, because there's so much in that term man up that says, you know, like, you can't be an emotionally healthy person because you're a man. Like, that's, men don't do this, right? And it's like, no, we're going to break all those rules. I'm okay with breaking all those rules, you know? And so I think there are some things to deconstruct, but if we just deconstruct it too much, we then have people that are struggling with their identity, right? And so I think, like, I feel like what we used to do is, like, if you had like a boy playing with dolls, you would have the dad say, "What are you, a girl?" Right? And with the newest generation having children, it's more like, "What are you, a girl?" And I'm like, I don't like either of those, you know? Like, I think that we can look at it and say, okay, he's going through a phase where he plays with dolls. You know, like, can we just do that?
Or do we need Joes or dolls?
No, boys don't play with dolls, right? Like, I
well, and you see kind of how it's doing the same thing, it's making the same assumptions.
It is.
And they're both equally problematic.
Well, you're forcing gender stereotypes onto people, when in reality it's like, man, like, you rock whatever masculinity you got, dude. You rock whatever femininity you got. You know, like, you want to put on lipstick, that's fine. Like, you know, like, it's like, I'm not going to push you into wearing the pink dress because you're my daughter. It's like, but if you say you want to wear the pink dress, hey, that's cool. You know, like, and it's, I think being a lot more relaxed in how we approach it, I think, is the healthiest thing we can do. And it's just, we've got a society that's been so hung up on gender. And I'm still stuck on that scripture. There's no Jew nor Gentile nor male nor female. I'm just like, all right, can we just, like, I don't know, treat people like people? Can we do that?
But then women must remain silent in the church.
And they must vote the same as their husbands. Did you see that on Twitter? I was like, oh, dude, come on now.
Right.
I mean, not to get political, but my gosh, like, who cares?
My wife didn't vote for me.
Did you vote? No, we're not. Yeah. Anyway, Well, that was going to be less political, like, but then I was like, okay, no, I'll ask you that privately. Let me ask you this. Well, so once again, going back to some of the experiences I've had, like we're really, so like I'm down in the South and in the South, and we're up in we're basically a small country church. Well, sorry, we are a small church in the country, not a small country church. But because we're in the country, it's a very interesting distinction. So like one of the things, like, so we had our giant church conference, like where everyone meets up and talks about things. And my mom said some things, and she voiced her opinion on a number of topics, and she all her own opinion from her own observations and stuff like that. And there are rumblings going around that like I was feeding her things to say that she could complain about without me, voicing it as a pastor type person. And it's like no, she's her own person who has her own thoughts and did her own things. It's nothing. Yeah. She did not need me to say anything, and I don't need her to say anything for me. I can do it myself too. Right. So,
did she have a head covering on when she stood up and said those things?
She did not.
Well, that makes.
She had her hair.
Oh.
So, like, kind of your hair does that in a way.
Something, right? That's what Paul.
Do you think it's because your mom, like, because it's a woman that they assumed that that's what would happen? Like, you wouldn't put your dad up to say anything?
And we don't. I don't know for sure that that's like necessarily like what they're saying, but it's inferred from some of the comments that have been made. Yeah. I don't know. Dad didn't say anything. He just kind of was sitting there observing. And so she said it, and it's kind of like,
That's
and
that
she
Jezebel
said,
spirit.
Huh?
That's that Jezebel spirit.
Wow. Man. Who hurt you, Jimmy?
You're such a misogynist, Jimmy.
Who hurt you?
You've been on weird Christian Twitter too long, man.
Yeah, I had to disassociate myself from weird Christian Twitter. That is becoming a bad little clique, unhealthy. And I found out a lot of them. I really didn't like them. I was like, they're kind of some of these guys are kind of buttholes on a regular basis, all day long.
I am.
Their poop is not in a group.
No,
poop is not a group. No.
They're part of that young.
It all over Twitter.
Part of that young crowd Robert Greene was talking about, and part of me is like, I'm just gonna so boomer them or whatever.
Exactly.
Hey, who wrote this? Teaching a 4-year-old doing dishes, well-intentioned harm. What's that?
That was me again.
What was that? I'm not
okay. So I I just realized something. Never mind. So going back with the experience I had at the church, but the best way that I can relate it to is, if you've ever had or tried to teach like a young kid or a 4-year-old how to do the dishes, like they're like, oh, I want to help, and then like in order for them to help, you have to stop doing the dishes yourself and help put them up in a position where they can do the dishes themselves, and then they do a terrible job and make a mess and have to be micromanaged, and then you end up having to rewash all the dishes that they helped with, and their helping ended up prolonging the dishwashing period like multiple by like 10 20 minutes. And
I honestly think that's what it's like for God working with us.
That was one of my thoughts.
And then we're like, God couldn't have done this without me. And God's like,
You were a chosen vessel.
Yes. and so part of my question is like, so I know, John, that you've had a 4-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
What are some what are some ways that that you went around that? Because like some of the stuff, like in people's attempts to help me out, it's actually taking me more time to do things. But then I also want to encourage people, kind of going into the second thing, I also want to encourage people to still help out, and but I also have to get stuff done at some point, especially when like some people are like, hey, why hasn't this ministry launched? Well, I'm still doing X, Y, and Z to launch this other ministry that you were saying was the most important ministry to launch. and now you're getting on me for not launching the first ministry when I'm doing the second ministry. And so anyway, what are some tips and when you had the your kids try to help you out that were less than helpful?
Were more helpful, you mean? Like how did I deal with the fact that my kids weren't super helpful?
Well, tried to be, because you want to encourage that and you want them
Well,
to feel that they're doing good.
I think something you can do is simplify the task, right?
Okay.
And so like even like with dishes, let's say, it's like, tell you what, I'm gonna leave some dishes in the sink, and you're gonna dry those and put those away.
Mm.
I'll take care of loading the dishwasher. I'll wash the rest of the dishes, but you just need to dry and put away these dishes when I'm done. And so I think you can simplify the task so that it's at their level. And then maybe as they grow, you can give them more and more responsibility. I think you're talking about adults here, though, right?
Yes. But
Yeah.
and I know, and I use that analogy just because, like, working with kids so much, it totally, that's just where my mindset goes to. Like when the little kid wants to help me paint something, I say, no. I was like, go ahead, you can paint this. I'm like, ugh. But then also, but working with adults, it's it's just sometimes they want to, and I'm thankful for their help, and I'm glad that they're showing up to help. But then I've had to either micromanage just because you don't know how to do what I'm doing, and so I'm trying to help you learn that, or it's a situation where, like, okay, so in order for me to help you do this, I've got to write down instructions on how to do it and catch you up to where I'm at so that you can take over, and then you've got the follow-up questions and whatnot. But I think
certainly would try to chunk it and give them smaller tasks that are very doable.
Baby steps, Bob. Baby steps. Baby steps, Bob.
Baby steps.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have big feet because I'm a dinosaur. Baby steps are difficult.
But that's it, because it's like you want to be able to give them a sense of, what is the term? Self-actualization, right? That's the educational psychological term for that. And it's like you want them to feel like they're doing something and they're bettering themselves and they're contributing. And so it's like, okay, well, how about this? Okay, like I'm just kind of frazzled right now. I am trying to sort through this project and trying to figure out what exactly needs to be done. Would you be able to just run and get me a coffee right now?
Yeah.
And then you get your poop in a group, and then you can say, all right, I just need these chairs put in rows. Like, can you do that right now?
Yeah.
And then I'll give you something else to do, because now I'm starting to get my list together. Like maybe, because maybe you could even make it like, kind of like I'm just trying to figure this out right now. So the best thing you can do is take these things off my plate.
Right. That makes sense.
And then it's not about them. It's about you and them trying to help you.
Right. Because that's where I'm at. Like, and I like that. Just to clarify, not that anyone's going to be listening to this at my church that I'm at. Like, I don't think of them as children. It's just a matter of, like, that's an example that I'm thinking towards.
We heard what you were saying.
No, I mean, and I think it's interesting because, like, for me, it's like I make music with my kid, but now my kid's skill level is so good that it's kind of like he looks at it and says, yeah, Dad, I cut like 3 of your vocals from this. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. He's making those decisions, right? Like, and so, but I mean, at first it's like, oh my gosh, what if he gives me a track that I hate and it's garbage, right? Like, that could have happened, but it never really happened.
Send him to his room.
Yeah.
Go to your room.
Asserting yourself and alienating help.
That's me again.
Is that by being too bossy? Is that the issue?
No, I'm going at it from the kind of the idea of when you have like someone who's super trying to be super helpful, and what they're doing is actually either working against what your overall plan is.
Mm-hmm.
Or if what they're doing is stepping, like, in their attempt to help out stuff, they're actually stepping on your toes and like undercutting you or undermining you.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you got to like put the person in their place, like, hey, this is not your responsibility, you need to back off. But then you also don't want to squelch their desire to help,
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like what if their heart is like in legit the right place, but
Mm-hmm.
in they're trying to do that, they're undermining or actively like harming like what you're trying to do.
Okay. So I'm just picturing like tomorrow I got to load up the U-Haul with some furniture. Okay. So let's say somebody's like, I'm going to put the ramp in place. And I'm like, the ramp isn't needed.
Yes.
Right. And it's like, okay, so I could be like, no, don't put the ramp there. That's a dumb idea. Right. Like, it's like, okay, no, I'm not going to say that.
Right.
Okay. So maybe just like, okay, I look at the person who's just starting to put the ramp in there and I'm like, okay, just hold on. Here's what I was thinking. I was thinking it would be quicker if we did it this way.
Mm-hmm.
So I would prefer that we not put the ramp in position. No, I mean, it's up to them to be like, right. No, I want to put the ramp there. Like, I mean, if they're doing that, then they're just a jerk, right? But like,
right.
But you know what I mean? Like, if you can kind of give your thinking and say, this is what I was thinking. Now, I don't see how they would exert their opinion anyways.
Mm-hmm.
If you're technically the one in charge, right?
Potentially, yeah.
What do you think, Jimmy?
I think he needs to tell them that he's the man of God, and if they don't like be like, don't
who hurt you, Jimmy? Who hurt you?
Touch not my anointed and do my prophets no harm. And then you need to rebuke the Jezebel spirit about them and tell them if they don't like it, they can go to the country church down the street because there's only 2 of them where you live. And
wow.
You know, so, Paul talked about bringing a rod of correction, right? Well, you don't want to have to tell them, you don't want to have to bring it, but you're the man of God. No. Well, I think
you're the man of God, Jimmy.
Right. I think this is one of those things where you don't ever, I don't think you ever do want to assert yourself, because if you get to the place where you're having to tell somebody this is the way it has to be done, even if you're doing that in a quote unquote, as we like to say in corporate America, nice, nasty sort of way, you've automatically alienated them. And so I think this kind of becomes an issue of gentle persuasion where you kind of try to think around them a little bit, to the point where, you get them on your side. And instead of trying to directly, it's kind of like when Paul was, telling, who was it? Theophilus, about freeing Onesimus. He's just kind of like, he's kind of been a real help to me, and he's your brother in the faith. And I think it would be really beneficial if, you kind of did the right thing here, and so he definitely came to a diplomatic, and, I think most scholars assume that, he must have freed him, his slave, because otherwise, why would we have the letter? And so I think a good study in Philemon would, kind of be something to chew on there as you approach that, so that, you can help get people on I'm not going to say on your side, because I think you're all on the same side. And if you start framing it as my side versus your side, then you're, walking down a path that's not going to be good for either party.
Right.
But, I guess to some degree you're wanting to get them to still do what you want. But you just kind of got to go about it in a very subtle way, because people don't usually respond very well to barking orders unless it's in the military. And even then, make them think, like, make it so that it's their idea to see it your way.
Yeah, because it kind of, you get into that whole thing, like, I'm sure was happened somewhere else, but like I just remember it from Game of Thrones, when the guy says he's talking to one of the other characters, like any man who has to say I am the king is no king at all.
Yep, 100%, totally, and that's it, right? I mean, this goes back to the I know things about things.
Right.
I don't remember that was an episode many moons ago, but it's like it's like my encounter on Facebook where somebody had said John's just a poop disturber. I'm like, you know what? If you can't see that that's not who I am, that's on you.
We keep talking about poop a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, this one's going to be like a symphony of poop. I think that's going to be the title of this episode.
Better than the other one that could have definitely have been with regards to what is his name? With regards to Michael or David, Michelangelo and David.
Oh, the penis and stone. Please don't make that your title. You will get a lot of clicking to your podcast. But
that might not be terrible then.
Right. They may find Jesus, so we need to make our podcast titles as pornographic as sounding as possible.
Yeah.
I can't even remember what the joke was. It was like something like that. There's definitely a penis there.
Something like that, yeah.
Something like that.
Man, if you make that your title, so many people are going to click it. I don't know if I can share it though on my Facebook page because my mom will see that. I'd be like, Jimmy, what did you share? Like,
oh man, speaking of clickbait, so this guy, I've read his books, like several of them now, and he's a very, very much a progressive Christian, and like questioning the views on hell, talking about religion and politics, talking about bunch of stuff. Anyways, Jesus untangled, Jesus unveiled, like all these things, right? And just questioning a lot of the things that are kind of orthodoxy right now. And he comes out with this article that talks about the dangers of progressive Christianity. But what he does is basically talks about how modern Christianity deviated from the original interpretation of a lot of things, right?
Ooh, interesting.
Yes. So it was clickbait. And it's like, and it only had like, I think 2 points in it, but I'm like, all right, Keith, you need to come on the Wax Museum to talk about this. So we're going to do an episode on it. And I'm really excited about it because I'm going to title it The Dangers of Progressive Christianity. And so many people are going to listen to it and be very disappointed. It'll be a lot of fun.
Yes. Save us self-promotion. That's okay. We love it.
I'm assuming this was a Jimmy one. Pick 3 TV shows you would take with you in a bunker and only watch for the rest of your life.
I don't know. I might have added that a long time ago. I forget.
No, that was me. I'm sorry.
Oh,
I just added. I wanted to do something that wasn't as like intense.
All right.
I don't know. We get pretty intense about Star Wars, Theo.
Well, Kanye West is on my side. That's all we need.
What are your 3?
I would pick.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, go ahead, Jimmy. I'll defer to you.
Oh, off the top of my head, geez, it's really kind of depending on the mood, but I'd probably say 3 TV shows. Everybody Loves Raymond, New Girl, and gosh, a third one, The Wonder Years.
Ooh, The Wonder Years.
That is a very interesting like set of them.
I mean, I kind of made it up on the top of my head, so
yeah.
I did like New Girl. I haven't seen the whole thing, but it was really funny.
It was good all the way.
Years. What was the third one?
Everybody Loves Raymond.
Oh yeah, okay. That show was great. I haven't seen it since its original airing.
I've watched it 3 times.
What about you, Theo?
Oh, wow. It would be Babylon 5, my favorite sci-fi show. Psych, which is amazing. If you
Psych is great. Yes.
And then The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Ooh,
good one.
That's good. All right, mine are pretty easy. Seinfeld.
Oh, that's a good one.
How I Met Your Mother. And The Office. I could just watch all of those over and over again. I think I would never get sick of them.
Like I have like not yearly but I have regular time. There are shows that I will regularly, whatever the word I'm trying to say, watch through. And those are The Office is one of them, as is Breaking Bad.
Oh, Breaking Bad was great.
ESG. But that's not one it's a really good story, and so is Better Call Saul. But it is not one that I would want to watch for the rest of my life because it does.
No.
It's a really good storytelling, but it's not it is.
And yeah, I would say that there's definitely. I think How I Met Your Mother is very uplifting. Like I just think it's interesting.
Really?
Legend. Wait for it. Dairy.
Legend. Wait for it. I hope you're not lactose intolerant. Gary.
Beautiful thing.
I think that just about does it for today's episode. Any final comments? Any final comments, gentlemen?
I'd like to point out once again that Kanye agreed and declared that the Disney Star Wars trilogy was soulless, and they got away from storytelling. And that proves that even though Jimmy does idolize Kanye, that Jimmy has a lot of growing up to do.
Talk about somebody who's just trying to poke the bear, and it's like we need to do a second episode right here and now of ADD Mastermind just so we can explore show and stinker that you like. I've had some stinky cheese in my time, but
love you.
Heaven help you, young man.
I think I'm older than you.
I not with opinions like that. You can't be. No.
And with that, everybody,
Jimmy'sTable.com.
I bid good day.
Jimmy'sTable.com.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Air Smudge.